For those just tuning in, we just wrapped up our game between the Custodes and the Grey Knights, our holiday special of silver and gold, with a Custodes victory. Final score, Custodes 73 to a Grey Knight 66. I honestly thought I was tabled in there like turns 2 and 3 after I got hit.
Me too. I was the first one to do damage, and I picked up over 700 points of your army.
Yeah, all 3 Dread Knights were gone in 1
3
turn.
Dread Knights and the Custodes with a cheeky little flyover.
Yeah, that was vicious. That was very, very vicious. But as we've seen, the army does have a lot of strats that benefit the Purifiers. As the Purifiers get beat up and get reduced down, it actually makes them more efficient in some ways. The one squad that was on my side that was fighting with Telemon and stuff like that, they got beat up, and it just triggered them to go +1 to hit, +1 to wound, and just...
Some wild interactions here. Like, I interrupted with my Telemon, killed one of them, then I'm like, oh, I spent 2 CP to interrupt, and then I killed one of your guys, but now I give you a +1 to hit. Because Purifiers get +1 to hit when they're below full strength, and +1 to wound blow when they're below half strength. So I powered you up. And you did the same thing to me later on. Yeah, I did the same
thing. I didn't even think about it.
You did the mortal wound proc on Crow's unit, and he took a wound off of 2 of my Dreadnoughts, which then gave them reroll once hit, just made them more efficient. So.
I got a little blood crazy because that Venatari was alive with 1 wound, and I'm just like, no, he does not need to get away. No, he needs to go away now. No.
He's got a 10-inch move, so he finished more than 6 inches away from you. So instead of hurting him, he just powered up my Dreadnoughts.
I was trying everything just to finish him off. I needed. It would have been better if it would have been better to not use that strat and just have the end of flight phase strat finish him off. Because then not doing damage to you would have led to me being able to possibly have the Grandmaster survive. And if the Grandmaster got 1 swing, 1 attack sequence into that Dreadnought, there's a really good chance he could take him out.
Sure, and one thing goes differently in my direction, and then I beat you by 15 points instead of 7. You know, the whole game is... Yeah, the whole game it came down to dice, and there were definitely...
But that was one thing.
I didn't think I would pick up all 3 Dread Knights turn 1.
Much like you said with the Telemon, those are things that we could have avoided that we did damage to ourselves. You could have not interrupted with the Telemon.
Still had 2 CP then for later on.
And not given me the +1 to hit.
Yeah.
I could have not spent that to do the damage and possibly hit the Grandmaster hit. So it's some of those things to think about with it is like, okay, how much damage am I really going to do and what buff am I going to get? I wasn't expecting that with the Dreadnoughts. I just forgot I didn't know they did that at that moment in time. We talked about it. I just forgot. And that was it. And then it was like, oh, okay, well, that's a thing. And now you reroll 1s. And it was one of the shots that you rolled. You're like, oh, I miss. Haha, 1. I reroll. And I'm like, ugh. And that was a good chunk of damage that, again, put him right there to finish him off.
Yeah. So
that's where that's a big play. And I mean, my end game play was complete and total luck. I mean, rolling any time you stick a 9-inch charge, that was complete and total luck. So it just kind of lowered the point gap of it. Secondaries were really rough on me this game. And it's kind of the second time. I have a lot of damage output, but not a lot in the secondaries. It's something I need to consider for it. I don't know. I mean, there's the talk with the Grey Knights with like Razorbacks and stuff like that. I'm not a big fan of that route because the combat was where it was at. Like the Purifiers smacked, the strikes smacked.
Yeah, I thought I had the game in the bag pretty easily because I picked up your 3 Nemesis Dread Knights, which is your most powerful anti-tank output because they're shooting a strength 10 and their combat's they're strength 14 in combat, strength 12. Either way, they're wounding both my Caladiuses and the Dreadnoughts on 3s. And still, those 10-man bricks of guys getting in there and the Purifiers re-rolling wound rolls with the strat is huge. And then even when the unit gets down to 3 or 4 guys, they get +1 to wound, and then you use the strat to re-roll wounds. It really adds up really fast.
Especially to finish off things. I like when you have 4 wounds left on a Dreadnought, then I'm able to push that through. So yeah, I do, and I mean, I like that the strike. I mean, I love the fact they're OC2. They're able to steal that objective away, and the Brotherhood Champion. I mean, you know, I hear a lot of people saying take the Tech Marine with the Radiant Champion. Probably would have been more damage out of him, but that Brotherhood Champion in that fight first was huge. There was twice that came into effect, and he re-rolled wounds into the character.
And another hilarious rules interaction is that now that 2 of these Dreadnoughts are characters, and he got to re-roll hits and wounds into both of them, and still cranked out some extra damage. So yeah, interesting rules interactions overall, because now making the dreadnoughts characters works against them in certain circumstances where you have anti-character buffs.
Mm-hmm. See, now moving forward, I don't feel like I would have liked the Land Raider in this matchup because, like I see in the Caladius tanks, I feel like it would have been the same thing. The Caladius tanks, we played this game of hiding from each other,
Yeah.
except you have two. So then when you do peek one out there and I shoot at it, if I don't eliminate it, then both of them definitely eliminate me. If I do eliminate it, you shoot at me, and then you have other things that have high damage to finish off my Land Raider.
The shooting from the bikes was very strong. Strength 10 with now twin linked was a big deal. The bikes were hitting pretty consistently, so that was a big deal. And yeah, the Caladius, I didn't use this game because you're 4-up invulns, but if I was shooting at a Land Raider, I have a strat that both lets me ignore modifiers to hit rolls and my ballistic skill, and allows me to ignore cover. So even if your Land Raider's in cover and you don't have a armor contempt strat in this list, so I'd still be at AP3, so I'm still putting your 5-up saves. And
that's gonna push them away real fast.
And the D6 plus 2 damage, and even a Land Raider, I basically need 3 shots to get through from the Caladius. That's enough that'd be enough to finish them off. So.
I would consider possibly dropping 2 of the Dread Knights to try the Razorbacks out. The las cannons would be nice, especially because they're twin linked, and putting like a Purifier squad that's coming out of them, it's going to give that reroll hits. I know that a lot of people are talking servitors and the servitors do this service. I don't like the lack of OC on that. I really don't. They're OC 0. I feel like, you'd say, but they're like Eradicators. They're not toughness 6. They're not 3 wounds apiece. They don't have a 3-up save, and they're just going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of it, to really even give them the 3s to hit, you have to take the Tech Marine. And we were talking about this the other day. It's 50 points for the dudes, 85 points for the Tech Marine. And what's the cost of 3 Eradicators? 100 points?
100.
And you get 5 shots off the Eradicators?
4. You got 1 multi-melta and 2 single-shot melt. So it's 4.
4 shots, which is the same as what we're seeing.
Yeah, and they reroll all hits, wounds, and damage into any vehicles or monsters.
Right, for 20-ish points cheaper. So I don't think I like them as much, but having 2 more 5-man Purifier squads, that could be something interesting, because the Purifiers did really, really well. They hit really hard. And then if you kill 3 of them, those last 2, you have to kill 3 and then the last 2 guys go into super mode.
Yeah. I think I like the 10-man's better because, man, that last squad you had down to the last 4 guys hit like an absolute freight train.
We'll still run.
You spent the CP on rerolling hits and wounds. Now, obviously, when you get below half strength, you got to worry about battle shocks. And so you had to spend a CP to make sure you auto pass that. Because if you don't pass that, then you can't reroll the wounds, which is a big impact on their damage. But still, just real strong, really able to punch up way harder than they should be otherwise.
Yeah, no, and that is something interesting, is that I could just take the points and go 10 more Purifiers, go 30 Purifiers, and just try to, maybe make one have another one that's with side cannons. I do like the Purge, though. The Purge are actually really growing on me a lot, especially with this detachment, having the reroll hits and having those little 5-mans to bounce around. I wouldn't be against maybe dropping 2 more of those in there to be part of my secondary game in that sense. Yeah, they're only $125 for them. I've seen some talks with some people saying about Drago and Terminators. So I could always use them. They can't do the charge onto an objective.
Yeah, because that excludes the Terminator.
For that, but then Drago gives them +3 to the charge and they deep strike. So I could take a 5-man squad and do something silly with that. Yeah. That could be a nice way to be able to keep that hollowed ground going.
Oh, that's gross. Then you could have 2 6-inch charges out of deep strike.
Yes.
Barf. No, no thanks.
Yeah, so I'm considering that. And like I said, that's one of the things I was thinking about, going a little more infantry heavy. I feel like the Dread Knights are super good. They're super, super strong. But now we have Necrons, vehicle heavy. You have the Custodes, vehicle heavy. We still have Iron Hands exist. There may not be the best of the best because with the Librarius group coming up. But we have a lot of armies that have heavy vehicles, which means that if some of these armies, like, and even with the Grey Knights with running Razorbacks, if we have a lot of these armies that are going to be running vehicles, people are going to be bringing more anti-vehicle weapons. And as we just seen, one of my greatest anti-vehicle weapons is punch it in the face till it dies.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Anytime you have the ability to go anti-tank, but also anti-infantry in the same squad, like in my Blood Angels, I've been running 6-mans of the Blade Guard vets. They get a bunch of attacks. They go to strength 7, led by a chaplain. They're getting +1 to wound. So even they slap really hard into vehicles, but also just blend through infantry. So having the ability to go into both, and that's huge. The purifiers have the ability to go in both. You think about the shooting a lot of times with purifiers, but when they're getting +1 to hit and +1 to wound, once they get down below half strength, their combat is ludicrous.
Yeah. So that's some things to think about. Maybe I think the next list, and this will be sometime in January because we got other detachments to run through. I think the next one I want to try, I want to go with infantry and see how that works out. I can slap Drago in there with 5 Terminators. Probably do the Terminators because of the OC value, and have them be able to charge in there. And like you said, I have 2 units that can just deep strike onto the field and charge, and I can really, really get in I can make that Terminator squad a 10-man. It doesn't matter at that point, and then just possibly charge that squad in there and just drag 10 Terminators right into someone's face. Again, they're no death shrouds, but that's a pretty brutal alpha strike hit.
Yeah, death shrouds don't get a 6-inch charge at a deep strike, so that's a big difference.
That is, and it is something interesting. I think, though, I'd probably be more compelled to go the 5-man route with the Terminators, just because like a 10-man's big, but that's a lot of points.
Yeah,
and I think
well, then that's your problem. You had a terrible secondary game. What did you score? 15 points on secondary?
Oh my gosh, it was horrible.
Yeah.
My secondary was 16, and that's usually one of my strong points, especially with Grey Knights.
Yeah,
16 to 27. You had 11 on me. The biggest part was that the primary was where it got. I beat you by 4 on primary.
Yeah, because you were killing so well and still holding. You had a sticky objective, that sort of thing. So you're doing fine on primary. It's just that I picked up 4 of your units turn 2, and you still have the damage output, but then just with fewer units, you just couldn't.
I think the Custodes can probably leave the list too. Even though she's good, she's cool. I really have not.
I mean, she uppy downy, so why do you need another uppy downy?
It was the fact that she's something that infiltrates, so I can get her out there to get on an objective when I don't go first. Or I'm sorry, when I go first, so I can at least get onto objectives to start making plays. But again, I can, if I have more infantry and can do more stuff with that, there's a lot more that can be played out of here with like 4-up invulns and reducing charge distance and stuff like that. So I think that might be the route that I want to go, is like go a little more infantry heavy, go away from the mech and try and just go, pull the Dread Knights away. We know what they can do. We know they're good, but go into that. What did the Dread Knights really do this game? I hit the bikes and I killed 1 bike from that squad from the 2. He shot a Telemon. I think he got 2 damage through.
Well, the Telemon reduces damage by 1 as a 5-up field of pain.
But needless to say, this game, I lost all 3 of those for a combined total of 1 bike, a little bit of damage, and a little bit of damage on Telemon, and all 3 were gone. Everything else is able to do it. So now you take that 210 points per Dread Knight, and we go and get 2 more squads of Purge in there that can bounce around the field and complete secondaries and shoot at targets out of line of sight. Get another big Purifier brick in there, take 10 more Purifiers, and then look into the Terminators and look into some options like that. And just go really heavy into the infantry, have the stuff that's able to go through the walls, have the stuff that's able to charge out of deep strike, and just get into my opponent's face. Keep my Brotherhood champion in there for other combat armies, but really get into people's face with that stuff. So now that's not a lot about the Grey Knights, but let's finish up with the Custodes here. Winners.
What's this hand gesture? Finish up with the Custodes.
Because the Custodes.
Yeah, I mean, the good stuff's good, and it gets better in the Custodes in this Solar Spearhead detachment. The Caladius tanks are good to begin with, but they take a little bit of damage, and they're rerolling 1s to hit, and just pushes their efficiency up. It doesn't sound like it's that big a deal, but when you're hitting on 2s, and rerolling 1s to hit, it's super efficient. And occasionally you just roll a couple 1s on your hit roll, and that just changes it completely. So, and it didn't really come into play the first couple turns because you hadn't damaged the vehicles right away. You killed the bikes first. So we weren't getting the rerolls, but the advance and charge with the Dreadnoughts was a big deal. it definitely was able, now they move 8 inches. They got +1 to advance, +1 to charge. Means when I advance and charge, I got 10 inches plus 3d6 with the advance and the charge combined. So it definitely allowed them to get in there. I think the Telemon is, he's a funny guy, but even with the feel no pain, even with the feel no pain, I feel like all these detachments, what we're getting is just a huge increase in the damage output. So durability is less important now and more trading, Yeah. So rather than the Telemon, I'd rather take some more small baby dreadnoughts, see if we can do a couple more.
Well, you took the maximum, 3?
Huh?
Are there different? Are they?
No, those are 2 different data sheets.
Oh, they're 2 different data sheets.
So I can run 3 of the sword and shield and 3 of the spear guys. So they're different data sheets. So, and there's also the regular Contemptor Dreadnought, which is just the fist and the multi-melta. He's the one that when he dies, he gets back up on a 2-up.
Huh.
It's with D6 wounds left, but he's always been that way. But now that he gets reroll 1s to hit and 1s to wound when he's below half strength, you kill him, he pops back up. And he's rerolling 1s to hit.
He's in his strongest point.
Yeah.
The little dreadnoughts were a lot more obnoxious. I feel like, what's the involved on the shield guys in shooting? Do they have an involved to shooting?
The shield dreadnoughts, they just have a 4-up involved.
4-up involved.
Yeah.
So I feel like being able to put stronger early game things, like we're talking about some of the weapons and the vehicles, for one that I can name best with Necrons, the Doomsday Arc. Things like that could probably pick them up, but they are able to hide much more efficiently than the Telemon.
Yeah, they're small, and the advance and charge, or the advance, and they're getting +1 to advance. So they have an 8-inch move now, +1 to advance. Mm-hmm. So turn 1, I went first, couldn't do anything, but I advanced everything up the table, and as I was able to get these dreadnoughts mid-table, but also protected behind terrain and that sort of thing. So I think that is kind of a big factor in it too, being able to stage them for later turns. They're very susceptible to shooting because they're only T9, but they're small enough base sizes so they can be hidden. You can pack 3 of them behind a piece of terrain here. They wouldn't be able to be shot until you get around the terrain. So it depends on your advance rolls, but I think they do have the ability to get out there and hide and then they can just run through a wall. For 1 CP, they can run right through the wall and come at you. So.
And that's the one thing I was going to comment with the Telemon is like, you can rush him into something, charge, and just tie some stuff up while your other things are getting in position to actually eliminate. So I think the Telemon might still have play. Can't you take him double close combat weapon?
Yeah, if I take 2 close combat weapons, it doesn't make them twin linked, but it does give him 2 extra attacks. And then if I give him the close combat enhancement, then he gets an extra attack. So he gets like 8 attacks that are strength 13. 8 attacks are strength. No, it goes up to 9 attacks, strength 13, AP 2, but flat 4 damage.
Honestly, actually, what I think you should be looking at for that, an Eversor Assassin, being able to just rush across the field into something, charge something, and just tie it up. Then you can move like one of the things.
No, the Eversor doesn't tie anything up. He's got 4 wounds. He dies after he kills something.
But the things that the things I mean that he can tie up. So like with the vehicle matchup, going back to Necrons, okay? When you move out with your Custodes tanks and want to take those shots, something like the Eversor can rush across the field, tag that Doomsday Arc, and now the Doomsday Arc, oh wait, its vehicle still shoots out, so that really doesn't matter yet, but -1 to hit, so you get a little bit of reduction.
Eversor is 120.
Is he? Really? That much?
He's either 110 or 120. He's expensive. Squad of 3 Venatari are 165. I'm going to go with the Venatari. They're bigger.
Venatari didn't do very much this game. They hit, but
I misplayed them. I should have put both of them into one of your squads to eliminate one of the squads because they just didn't do enough. Because you have 2-up armor, so they do get a lot of attacks. They do get lots of hits and lots of wounds. But with your 2-up armor, I just didn't get enough damage through. So I should have put them in. They're still really good. Going to Marines that are 3-up armor, they plow right through them. So
I don't know. I don't think that was necessarily a bad play with what you did, even though you separate them. Yeah, the one Venatari didn't do too hot into those purifiers over here. But if you would have left the purifiers in the middle, then I picked up the Custodes tank eventually, and that would have been a full squad of purifiers sitting out there to deal with later. At this squad, they were able to push through. The biggest thing is that this Caladius tank would have probably survived for another round because my Brotherhood champion and Strike would have had to take care of the Venatari and try and remove them first. But I don't think that was necessarily the bad play. I think that the dice just didn't happen to go in your favor because you smacked that squad in the middle, and the Venatari did all the work, dropping that squad down to 3 dudes, one being Crow.
No, I think the only thing I really would do differently with how I played was move all the dreadnoughts out. I had them back too far. I was sort of blocking out from getting into my deployment zone, but when it came down to this game was just going to be damage. So rather than worry about you scoring, I needed to move the dreadnoughts out so they could engage a turn sooner. But other than that, I think I played pretty well. I think as far as changing the list, I'll probably, I don't know, I might try the double-fisted Telemon, but I think I'd rather just take just more small units.
More little dreads.
Yeah.
I mean, it is good, and based on the points, too, it gives you more things to do your secondary games with, too, because I think that's kind of where we're both at. We have a lot of damage output, but our secondary games were lacking, so I think that's kind of another thing we need to look at is what can still synergize with our lists and get those secondary things. And that's kind of what I'm thinking with like stuff like the Purge or even the Terminators, once they hit and clear an objective, what can they do later on into the game, And so that's the biggest thing I'm looking at right now because, the damage output was there, but the Dread Knights did nothing, and I still had the damage output. So I need to get some secondary scoring stuff in there. And I think like Terminators could be a thing, and your little Dreadnoughts could be a thing too. Those able to go on the outside, able to utilize terrain really well, and able to move up the field to be that later game push. Because as you can see with this, with me not having very much left, I was able to do damage. It was very difficult for me to finish them off. I had to have some other factors involved to finish them off. For example, the fact that the one was a character and my Brotherhood champion was fighting it. That was, there's other factors that go into that to do the damage because he was able to reroll the wounds. So he was able to do a little bit more damage. So those are factors that go into that. And those Dreadnoughts are one thing that it's like late game, we've seen it with the Grandmaster. Late game, the Grandmaster was standing by himself and he just got knocked down to that little point. And once he's gone, that's it. He's gone. There was nothing I could do to get him out of there. I just purge, get out of there, go somewhere else. You got other work to do. Like taking your home field objective.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that about wraps us up. Everyone who's traveling around, hopefully, guys, this is going to be out on Thursday. So everyone, hopefully you guys had a safe holiday. And thanks for watching. And we'll talk to you again soon.